So I am only doing 5 books today. They're all from my summer TBR, and I wanted to share some of them with you. Need a little lip gloss. Whew. Okay, let's start with The Secret Book of Flora Lee. I have heard about this book so many places, all these rave reviews. People give it 5 stars constantly. I gave it 3 stars. I know. It was actually a really good story, but at times it felt a little repetitive, a little drawn out. I felt like it had like waves throughout it. Like it was, yes, this is excellent. And then it's like, oh, this is kind of like a lull. There's nothing, not really learning much right now. Story is just dragging. Oh, wow, this is so interesting. And then, that's how it felt like for me. Basically, this is a story that is based off of Operation Pied Piper, which was when a lot of children in England in the urban towns were sent off to various places in the countryside and other countries in order to find refuge so they wouldn't be bombed because of the threat of World War II. Obviously, we know England had been bombed during that time. So it was a way to kind of protect the children, but at the same time, it's like, why are you sending your children off to strangers? It's very weird. This is about 2 sisters, Hazel and Flora. Hazel's the older sister, and they go into this one village, and kind woman and her son take them in to their home. Their father is dead, and their mother, they really miss her a lot. Hazel creates some story to kind of calm her sister down. She's much younger than her. It's a way to like get their imaginations going, and Hazel loves creating this story for her sister. Her sister takes this story very seriously. So we go from the past into 1960, which is our past, but their present. And so now Hazel, she's a grown woman, and she is trying her best to enjoy her job. She is in a relationship that seems to be going nowhere really, and she wants it to go somewhere. She is living with her boyfriend, which I feel is kind of uncommon for that time. I don't know if it was common in England, so that was interesting to me. But she comes across this manuscript, and it's her story but written by someone else, and she is so confused, going, how in the world would anyone know this story except for my sister? Now her sister, we learn very quickly that she had gone missing during their time as evacuees. We learn the story of how she went missing slowly. And so it goes back and forth. She has her own emotions of how she never gave up on trying to find her sister. She always thought she didn't die. And so she's doing her best, and she is hoping that this author might be her sister. So yeah, it was a pretty good story. Content-wise, for those who want to know, while I can't remember any swearing, the only thing that is questionable would be that Hazel and her boyfriend at one point, they do get intimate. They don't give details. It reads kind of like if you read like the book of Genesis in the Bible, the way they describe like how things are done, it's kind of like that, but still it was like, don't really have to say those things. It would have been a fine book without it. Gift from the Sea. This is actually an interesting story because I didn't know the author at first is Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator pilot. So this is his wife that wrote this book. I read this book, and then at the end I was like, oh my word. I just like, it dawned on me like, is this? And so I looked it up, and yes. What is so interesting to me about that is she talks a lot about her marriage in this book, but I know there must have been some strange parts in her marriage because of the fact that her husband had children with multiple people, like 4 different people we know of. Besides that, this book, I found it fascinating. It's short. I really kind of wish this was a longer book because there was some really good bits of wisdom in this book. First off, you need to know that the author, she comes from a place of motherhood. She comes from a place as a woman who is often on her own, so she was a bit independent. And then she also was raising 6 children, although one, we know the fate of her first child, what happened to him, but she had 5 other children. And so even though she was this woman who was staying at home, being a homemaker, doing the things that were common in the time of her being a mother in like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. This book was written in the 50s. So she often said that she went to Maine growing up. She had been living in Connecticut. She had lived in New Jersey. She also was an aviator. She was a very independent, not a typical woman of the time, but at the same time, she was a stay-at-home mom. So I think it's important for you to know this when you read it, and she is going to come from a place from her own experience. And if she had lots of children, she's going to give examples of motherhood. What I loved about her is it seemed like she didn't like clutter. She didn't really like to own a lot of things. She seemed like a very simple person, and I really appreciate that as a minimalist. And I got so many great quotes from this book. I'm going to read some of these quotes because it's not often that I'm like compelled by something in a book. And I know lots of people like tab their books and go crazy. I don't really do that, but this book, I was like, I love these quotes. One cannot collect all the beautiful shells on the beach. One can only collect a few. One moon shell is more impressive than three. There is only one moon in the sky. That's a pretty neat way to think about it. Eternally, woman spills herself away in driblets to the thirsty, seldom being allowed the time, the quiet, the peace to let the pitcher fill up to the brim. Man, so I am a stay-at-home mom. I can imagine her life being sometimes kind of like a single mom if her husband was away a lot and having all those children, like how true that would be for her. Clothes first. Of course, one needs less in the sun, but one needs less anyway. One finds suddenly. One does not need a closet full, only a small suitcase full. So this is why I was like, oh, I love this. What woman resents is not so much giving herself in pieces as giving herself purposelessly. It's just fascinating. I really like the imagery in this between the beach life and going into her own life and just giving examples of wisdom to other mothers as someone that had been older at that time. So yeah, it was a good book. I didn't give it like an amazing amount of stars. Again, it was a little short. A Hint of Mischief. Guys, this was the third book in this series, and I was so into this one. This was the best of the series. This is a Fairy Garden mystery series. It is, I have explained before, that it's a very cute, cozy mystery book. It's always so clean. It's about a woman and her little fairy companion trying to solve these mysteries of these murders or whatever sort of events are happening around them. In this book in particular, there is a lot of buildup actually before there is a murder that happens. So I'll just briefly discuss what that was like. So there is going to be a sorority reunion party. It's a birthday party for one of the sorority sisters, but all of these women, they come around for this party and they're hanging out together. And one of them is an actress. And then you have all sorts of women, what their lives are like. And Courtney, who is the main character in this book, she becomes involved in some of them because they want to have like adult fairy garden party. And she usually does kid ones. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I could do that. So she starts to plan this party. And so she's talking to each of them at different times. They invite her to things with them. And so she's just trying to understand some of these people. Now, one of them she knows a little bit because she owns a shop in town and it's not too far from her own shop. It comes to a point where there is a murder. Everyone is in shock trying to figure out who in the world did this. And of course, you're looking at all the sorority sisters. You're looking at the people romantically involved with this person. Courtney does her best, but her father, who actually had been a policeman, but he's retired, he's always like, please don't get involved. Like, stop. Let it be done by professionals. I don't want you hurt. He's very worried about her. There is a detective and he's kind of like, stay out. I've got it. This was so well done, how they pieced everything together, how they boiled things down, how they were able to get you to want to know who did it throughout reading it. It was very well done. Again, I am going to try to read the rest of this series this summer, and I think I can do it. Against the Water. This is about an Australian professional surfer. He is retired from surfing now. This is his story, specifically about brain injuries that he had from surfing and how it affected his life. He tells about his upbringing with his parents, his siblings. He has many siblings. One of his siblings is a professional surfer currently still in. What I didn't like about this book, so much language throughout it, just everywhere. I don't want to read that. And it's like the worst language, bad language that you could think of, or throughout the book. Could have done without that. It would have made the book a lot better. I'm someone that wants to know the story. I understand like people use that language to give you the emotion they had, but I feel it's better if you could describe it without using those words. He also talks about his relationship with his father, the struggles his parents had together, the struggles his siblings had with his parents, and how he was able to find his wife and their relationship. He talks about life as a father, especially with dealing with the problems with his brain. And it was just fascinating and really sad at the same time to learn about what he had to endure and the pain that was for his suffering. It was a pretty good book otherwise. I mean, not the best autobiography I've read. It was average. And the last one that I'll talk about today, this is a Christian book, not heavily talked about throughout it though. It's just like here and there, just so you guys know. I wish there was actually a little more of a theme in it that gave you a little more talk about faith, but it is in here. And it's pretty thick, and I feel it could have been a lot thinner. I know there are other books in this series, but the way this was written, I do have to backtrack. The author, you could tell they were so into Jane Austen when they wrote this book, because they even used 2 characters from Emma and put them in this book. I don't like that. Be original. Don't use characters from well-known books. I don't like when people do that. I wanted to know a story without having to be nostalgic and go like, oh, if you're going to write a book about characters from a well-known, well-loved book, and Emma, I love Emma, can you please do it where it's a whole story where you tell it like this is about this, it's just a spin-off of my version of it, because then I could just avoid it. I'd rather read original stories than fan fiction type of stuff. That's just how I am. If I took the time to write something that was beautiful and that meant something to me, I don't want people, as much as I want them to love my stories, I don't want them to take my art and create something else with it. I don't know. That's just how I feel. I feel you could be inspired, but don't use the characters. Anyway, they're minor characters in this, thankfully, but she even says it in the author's note that she did that. So this story, their father dies. They have to sell one of their homes. They move to this house by the sea. Their mom is dealing with grief. She's not feeling very well. The sea is supposed to help her. They don't have the money now to be able to live their lives very well like they had been used to. So they decide to make like a bed and breakfast of sorts and have people stay and rent rooms in their home while they also live there. So you have the mother. There are 4 sisters that are living in this house. Sarah, she's the one that like understands how to do all the business sides of things. One sister who is very good at doing correspondence. So she writes all the letters trying to get people to want to rent the rooms and to send things in advertisements or advertisements, I guess it would be said if it were. I wonder if they say that in the audio version. I read the book, so I don't know, but I just love when people say advertisements instead of advertisements. I don't know. It is said in England. And then you have one sister who is like a teenage girl. She helps out where she can. She'll make beds or do whatever she can. And then you have another sister. She has a cleft palate that had been corrected, and she is very embarrassed by it because she has scars. She doesn't want to be seen by people. So those are the main sisters in here. You have Sarah's story. There is a love interest that is mentioned in the story. Different people come to rent the room. So yeah, Sarah has this one interest. I'm not going to say who it is, but as you read it, there is one. We learn a little bit of backstory about Sarah and some of her life up until that point. She doesn't really feel she wants to have a relationship, and there is a reason for that. And then you have Emily. She's a flirt. She loves to get to know different people. And then she has someone that she starts to form an interest in that is renting a room as well. While the sister with a cleft palate, her name is Viola, by the way. I think they would say Viola. She gets a job where she reads to people. She reads to someone in a poorhouse. She reads to a major that had been in the military, and she does the whole hiding herself. Those are the 3 sisters that are really focused on, and they each have a little backstory. But the way that they go from each one is not well done. We have the one sister, it seems like her story goes on for a little bit, and then all of a sudden we jump to this other one, and then it seems like she's the main one. Like, I feel Viola is the main character in this book because her story is the most focused on, but it wasn't in the beginning. So that was just very interesting to me because I'm like, so what's going on here? I wish that it was like better scattered. This chapter, this sister, next chapter, one sister, next chapter, the other sister, and just keep bringing them up so I don't go like, wait, what happened to them? I just felt it could have been better written, but it was very good. I read this book as, I got very hooked into it, and I cried near the end. I cried. I did. So that is a good thing. I have not cried in a book for a little bit, which was probably that one middle grade book a few reviews back, and that was like a surprising cry. So this one was definitely had a little more tears in that one. So I was emotionally put into this book. I look forward to seeing some of the stories. I want to see how they build over time. So I hope that it will stick to me very well when I start to read the other ones near the end of the year, because the next one's like a winter book and I want to save that for winter. Sisters of Seaview. Seaview is the name of their house, by the way. I found it to be very cute, very pretty, but the characters were charming. I enjoy learning about their love interests and the relationships being formed. Could have been a little more faith, but good. So that's all for today, which is very nice. It's a little shorter, and I hope that you had fun reading these if you have read them. And if you haven't read them, maybe you'll want to read them. If you have read them, tell me if you hated these books, if you loved these books, if you agreed, whatever it might be. I always love hearing different opinions, even if they are not the same as mine. It's just fascinating to learn how people can relate or not relate to different books in different ways. Okay, well, I'm actually off to the library to get more books. These two were my last ones I got from the library, and I try to go every week to the library. Time to get new ones. Have a good day. Bye.